matchup a little bit. I think you were watching this too. Caleb taking a very interesting approach to this matchup. What was that approach, Chip, and do you think he'll do it again in this match?
So the first thing about this, right, you know, you look at this matchup on paper, Charizard's a dark type, Gardevoir's weak to dark. A lot of people would look at that and think, oh, Charizard has a good matchup. And that's really not the case, and has not been the case for the majority of this format. Gardevoir is definitely favored into most Charizard decks. But when it comes to the deck selection here for Caleb, there are a lot of pretty interesting techs. He's playing an Avery here. He's playing Lost City, something that has fallen out of favor kind of recently. And he's also got a Panic Mask as a tech. All cards that aim to be just a little annoying in this matchup specifically.
Speaking of annoying, look at these prize cards here for Caleb. Double Charmander, Mew, and the Forest Seal Stone in the prize cards. That Forest Seal Stone, very big at allowing Caleb to get set up early and consistently.
Yeah, definitely not ideal, that Forest Seal Stone being just the one of that. Mew normally pretty important as well. But yeah, Caleb and crew, you know, he of course works with the dynamic and strong testing group of Azul Garcia Griego, Grant Manley, Grant Shin. Those four players have been dominating a good portion of this season. Of course, Azul getting a regional title earlier on. But yeah, they've come up with a really interesting strategy for this matchup, and it involves attacking with Charmander quite a lot. I think we'll be seeing Caleb just poke quite a bit with just some heat tackles. And Rowan did go first, but did not have much to speak of on this first turn.
Yeah, that's okay when you're trying to Mirage Step. We didn't see that or any Curlias in the prize card, so that is a little bit risky, of course, as we mentioned last round. If you do have
just depends what the contents of the hand are, right?
Curlias in hand, things can get a little bit awkward. What's not awkward, though, is Caleb's excellent first turn, starting things off with Arven. So can search the deck out for that Battle VIP pass. Now, finding Forest Seal Stone here would be great, but not having that means Caleb may not be able to get enough pieces this and the following turn to maybe do what lots of Charizard players want, that rare candy Pidgeot, rare candy Charizard.
Yeah, and there is an energy card in the hand as well, so Caleb has a few options. Could use this Arven to get a Battle VIP pass, find a Rotom, and use instant charge to end the turn. But he also could attach an energy for turn to the Pidgey in the active spot and use that pretty solid Call for Family attack. It allows you to just search your deck for 2 basic Pokemon and put them directly onto your bench. Is going to, of course, grab the Battle VIP pass, but the interesting thing to watch is going to be, does Rotom hit the field or will it be Call for Family?
I think Rotom here is maybe, well, the thing is, right, you've got to think about what can Rowan put together this turn. I mean, what are the odds that he really attacks, right? Like, what damage is he going to put into play? Versus what other Pokemon do you need to get down? I mean, even if you only have 1 Charizard in play the following turn, what are the odds that Rowan is getting 9 total energies and a Shining Arcana and Gardevoir EX in play the following turn? Listen, I played this deck a while. I've done it before. It's not a flex or anything, but it's not likely. It's not very probable.
Yeah, not super probable. You got to play to the odds at some time, but also at the same time, you want to play safe. Right? You want to play around as many reasonable possibilities that your opponent could have as possible.
So will be the Rotom and the Charmander put onto the bench with Battle VIP Pass. For some players, this last round may be the last time they play Battle VIP Pass in a regional event. So hoping for them as much as you can. And it is just going to be where this energy attachment goes. It will be onto that Heat Tackle Charmander.
Yeah, that is one nice thing for Caleb. He did prize 2 Charmanders, but does have 2 still in the deck, and the ones that he has available still are both of his Heat Tackle Charmander, which is kind of his strategy in this matchup. Just poke, be annoying, put a little bit of damage in play so that Rowan can't play around things like the Panic Mask later on in the game, and that is something that will almost be guaranteed to lock you up a turn or 2 if your opponent can't get through a Charizard.
And Rowan doing the bare minimum, Radiant Greninja coming down, evolving into Curlia, and Mirage Step will put all of these Refinement Curlias into play. This is a simple and great strategy for Rowan, and this makes it so the matchup just, every time these simple check marks get hit, right? Attach for turn, get Ralts down, Mirage Step. It gets even harder for Caleb unless he goes for, like we mentioned, maybe a little bit more of an unconventional strategy.
Yeah, let's see what Caleb does here. He has played quite a few Gardevoir throughout the course of this tournament up to this point and has a pretty solid record against them overall. So we'll see exactly if it's going to work out. Does play the Arven here. He has the pieces to go for Rare Candy, Charizard, just start swinging, start attacking. But normally that's where you find yourself in a tough spot as the Charizard player. The Gardevoir player pieces together, Reversal Energy, Gardevoir EX, Shining Arcana, and just knocks out your only attacker. Let's see what Caleb does here. What's his approach?
Does reveal and show that TM Devolution.
It's definitely something that can be a factor.
So here comes the decision making. Now, there is that Vitality Band, but it looks like with the Ultra Ball, considering maybe not needing that necessarily. So we will see Vitality Band hit the discard pile as Ultra Ball gets played, and it is going to be Pidgeot EX in combination with one of the rare candies in Caleb's hand. A Quick Search is now online. The backbone of this deck is in assembly. It is all constructed. What will Caleb choose to grab off this Quick Search? That's really the next decision for him here.
Yeah, probably just another Charmander. I think that's the thing he's missing right now in this hand currently. You want to at least have the threat of Charizard be something that is available that you could go for. So even if you're going to just poke with the Heat Tackle, if you only have one Charmander in play, it goes down. You're not threatening really too much. So grabbing another Charmander seems pretty solid. And let's see, is this strategy going to play out for Caleb? He shuffled the deck, so we're not going to see Rare Candy Charizard. I think we're just going to see Heat Tackle, poke.
Showing that TM Devolution. Way too early to use it, but it's something you've got to keep in mind if you're Rowan.
Yeah, it definitely can be solid. Now, interestingly enough, looking at Rowan's list, he actually only plays one copy of Rare Candy in his deck. I don't think we've seen that from Gardevoir up to this point.
No, really just fully relying off Mirage Step. Some games, if you really can't use Step, you're kind of out of luck. It's working out well here so far for Rowan at 10-2-2 and working out in this crucial match where he has a chance to make it into the top 8. Start things off with Refinement, and finally finds a Psychic Energy to use that Concealed Cards ability. So this is where, as Gardevoir in this matchup, if things play out normally, you usually are down a few prizes and can get full value off of Reversal Energy.
And I think that's one of the things with this strategy from Caleb that he's aiming to play around. He doesn't want to let Rowan have access to those comeback cards. I mean, this strategy is really trying to take advantage of the way lists are currently being built from these Gardevoir players. There's only one boss's orders in many of them. A lot of people cutting Pal Pad as well. Now, Rowan doesn't play Battle VIP Pass in his deck. He has been a very strong advocate for the no VIP Pass Gardevoir, which is maybe a little bit of a hot take for many of our players, but it's what Rowan's been doing. It's what he has found success with as well. And that allows you to have a lot of extra deck space. We see he's got the Cresselia in here, a card that many Gardevoir players have cut more recently, and he also does have Pal Pad in his list.
And wow, look at this for Rowan. Usually we don't see this Gardevoir EX come into play until there's a big turn for a knockout onto Charizard, but instead understands Caleb may just sit here. Rowan will be the one in this matchup putting on the early aggression. We see Gardevoir EX coming out turn 3. All 3 refinements used, and there are enough Psychic Energy in the discard pile to allow Cresselia to use that Moonglow reverse attack and take out one of these Pokemon on play for Caleb. Either one of these Charmanders are the only Pokemon that can be knocked out.
Yeah, easy choice here for Rowan. Definitely want to target down one of these Charmanders, take this KO. But then for Caleb, this is kind of a situation he is okay with because now his counter catcher is active, so he has different lines available. We could see something like the counter catcher to bring up that Gardevoir, and then even a Lost City coming into play to send that Pokemon to the Lost Zone.
It's not actually going to be a prize taken. Okay. We're just going to see 80 damage onto this Pidgeot EX. Rowan may be having a little bit of a counter strategy for this.
Yeah, super interesting what we're seeing here, Ethan.
So now Caleb is the one asking the questions of, well, if my opponent's just not going to take prize cards on anything, am I going to be put into a position? Literally, if you even just sit in Heat Tackle every turn, the Cresselia can just heal all but 10 off, and that's not really going to be a strategy that gets you anywhere. And the more time you give Gardevoir, the more time they can construct their deck and hand to only have cards they either want to discard or want to find off of hand disruption.
Yeah, I actually watched a really interesting game from Caleb in day 1 yesterday. You were standing there watching it as well. It was his game against Jake Gearhart, I believe, back in round 5 or 6, something along those lines. And we were talking about this strategy afterwards, figuring out if it would work out. And Jake Gearhart, did end up losing a very long game 1, which led to Caleb eventually being the one to win the set. I mean, it was just Caleb kind of poking, doing a little annoying things here and there, playing around all these comeback cards that Gardevoir normally plays, and eventually Jake just kind of ran out of gas at the very end of the game. Now, one thing that I think is definitely going to throw a little bit of a wrench in the plan here for Caleb is the Pokemon we just saw attack the last turn, the Cresselia. This is a card that many Gardevoir players have cut from their list, so Caleb has probably been able to capitalize on that. Does his strategy now change knowing that Cresselia is a viable option for Rowan?
So it looks like Quick Search being used to find a supporter for the following turn will be that Iono. There is also a Jirachi in the hand. This could maybe shut down what Rowan has committed to in this Cresselia play. We are just going to see the Nest Ball evolve into Charmeleon. Now, this is another one-prize Pokemon that can do a little bit more damage than Charmander. I hope it does if it's going to take all that strength to evolve.
Yes, yes. Dealing 50 damage with its combustion also becomes a decent option. It's got the Flare Veil ability as well, so it cannot be affected by the effects of attacks, so it's double protected from Cresselia right now, thanks to the Jirachi and, of course, its own ability.
We're just going to see an instant charge used by Caleb, so not putting any more damage into this Cresselia. I mean, if Rowan's plan is to just use Moonglow Reverse and knock the active out, you're almost assisting him at this point. He just doesn't have to commit any more energies to this active Cresselia. We're going to see the concealed cards, and this is just standard run-of-the-mill stuff here for Rowan. Does have some things in the back of the mind, I'm sure, thinking about, okay, well, after I take a knockout, once we finally start taking prize cards, what is this exchange going to look like back and forth? But for now, it's just thinning the deck out, discarding cards, going on his way.
Yeah, and this is the risky thing about this strategy for Caleb. You give Gardevoir tons of time, and if you give Gardevoir time, it is going to probably pick you apart. But ultimately, that's what Caleb is kind of hoping for, is that Gardevoir is going to just get through the deck, have a lot of resources utilized, and then you'll find yourself in a position where you can keep track of all the resources that have been utilized and try to capitalize on that in some way. Boss's Orders, Counter Catcher, bring up some Pokemon. With all these different energies being locked up into play currently for Rowan, is that something that Caleb can try to capitalize on, ensuring that a Zacian or a Gardevoir can't get a one-hit knockout that it normally would be able to if it had access to more energies in the discard pile?
It's ways that you can play around this. Got to think outside the box, especially when you're up against a dedicated sort of Gardevoir main, as I would call Rowan, has pretty much been playing this deck, a very similar build, not playing anything like the Battle VIP Pass. We're just seeing these Nest Balls as the inclusions to find Pokemon out.
Real quick update from the floor at Table 1. Colin Murley Matthews and Mitchell Silva, who we saw in the last round, did intentionally draw, so they are both locked up. We know at least 4 of our top 8 players for sure. And then, 5 and 6 have a pretty good shot in Halo Bernolti and Edwin Arroyo.
We are going to see the energy attachment to the Gardevoir EX. This could be an opportunity where Rowan maybe starts to attack with this Gardevoir and sort of push these prizes in Caleb's face, maybe tempting him a little bit, saying, hey, look, I've got a juicy 2-prize Pokemon here for you. Would it be a shame if it got knocked out or something? Yeah,
it definitely would be an interesting strategy. You don't normally want to attack with your Gardevoir EX into the Charizard matchup, but might be an opportunity for Rowan to try to capitalize on Caleb's little shenanigans that he's going for. And, I don't think Caleb's going to fall for any sort of bait plays like that. He's going to be pretty wise to any of Rowan's possible tricks.
So not retreating, not doing anything else, but moving 1 damage counter from this Gardevoir EX to the active Charmander. Will be now at 2 damage counters on it. So the way the math actually works, this 20 damage is slightly relevant because now it will only... not quite, since 10 more damage would be relevant since it does 300 damage for 8 energy cards attached. Sure. I was thinking for a second it was doing 310.
I don't think this Charmander is probably ever going to become a Charizard, though. That is the thing as well. I think Caleb would rather Heat Tackle KO his own Charmander than utilize a Charizard
in play. Yeah, that's fair. So Caleb will just continue to turn out.
And hey, this is a pretty good turn for it. That Tech Avery. Rowan kind of grimacing at that supporter being played. What does he discard here? Losing a Curlia that you put into play with Mirage Step feels pretty painful, but I think it's really his only choice, right?
Yeah, this is maybe a situation where Rowan could have played this game without having the Radiant Greninja, or it's kind of weird, right? He would still get discarded, right? It's
one of the
things
situation. Is that, it's Caleb playing an uncommon card, right?
That's
Rowan
true.
is never going to play around Avery and Charizard. Nobody plays Avery and Charizard, and it's one of the benefits here for Caleb and, just Pokemon players in general to play unconventional tech cards that your opponent won't be expecting.
And this is actually very smart from Caleb with this card, because what it does is it forces Rowan to use something like the Super Rod early on, which you really want to be using to get your Gardevoir lines back when they're knocked out.
Caleb is absolutely keeping track of every single one of those cards that hits the discard pile mentally. You know, he is well aware that Rowan only has 2 Super Rod. No Gardevoir list. Rowan plays 3 Super Rod?
He does.
Are you kidding me?
I was talking with some of the Canadian crew, and they were telling me on
when you play no Battle VIP pass.
This
you can fit the 3rd Super Rod in your deck.
If I was playing Gardevoir, every turn I open, go first, attach, and then just have Mirage Step in my deck, then the deck would be broken. You don't need Battle Pass.
So both of these players trying to capitalize and play things that their opponent may not be expecting. Rowan was caught off guard by the Avery from Caleb. Now we'll see as this game progresses, does a 3rd Super Rod play from Rowan catch Caleb off guard?
It is late into the tournament, so I would be curious if maybe Caleb and his teammates have discussed what these lists look like.
Yeah, both of these players are definitely well networked, right? They've got lots of friends. They know what other people play, and they're all, you know, surrounded by other top-level players, so they definitely talk. They definitely, you know, if Rowan had any friends that played Caleb, they definitely told him, hey, yo, Caleb's going for this crazy, weird strategy, and if any of Caleb's crew played against Rowan, they definitely told him, hey, this guy's got 3 Super Rod, right? So all things worth considering.
And still, Rowan not taking any knockouts, just hitting this Pidgeot again with the Roaring Scream. Will deal 120 damage, so Pidgeot is now up to 200 damage on it, and this puts it in range of a few different attacks. Now there is the Cresselia, or rather there is the Jirachi in play, so Cresselia can't quite finish it off, but I mean 80 HP, not a lot remaining, and it is that 2 prize Pokemon, so see how Rowan can use these sort of what seems right now as pretty, I mean, they're significant, but they're very unconventional plays. They're not really progressing towards knockouts as fast as these decks usually try to, but it's for good reason.
I think we're about to see a second Pidgeot come into play, by the way. Quick search found a Pidgeot. Now Arvin going to get another rare candy. You can only use 1 quick search per turn, so not going to have that as an option, but Caleb wants to make sure that he has a Pidgeot to respond to 1 Pidgeot eventually being KO'd.
So we'll see how this dynamic plays out. Right now, Rotom is building this hand up to be monstrous, having almost any option that Caleb really wants to work with the following turn. Trying to see if there's any key cards in Caleb's deck that could be relevant. We already talked about the Panic Mask. We've talked about the Technical Machine. There's a Lost City in this deck. Could that be relevant as well, potentially?
Yeah, Lost City is definitely going to be something that Caleb wants to try to utilize at some point. This deck, you know, this strategy, he's almost trying to play it as a control deck, right? You know, totally pivoting the normal Charizard game plan, capitalizing on what his opponent has utilized, what they've already discarded, and, you know, if that means that he can Lost City something to limit your opponent's options, you know, he'll go for plays like that.
This Screamtail may get another Energy Psychic embraced onto it. See Rowan just really thinking about how to sort of respond to Caleb's control-ish strategy in this matchup, not taking knockouts, being patient, and what Rowan has sort of come to at this point is, without having any easy choices off of these refinements anymore, is getting rid of key pieces that usually matter in this matchup. We saw Counter Catcher be refined and discarded the previous turn. Yeah,
Rowan, you know, no slouch at all. He's a very good player, able to adjust on the fly, and that's exactly what we're seeing him do with a play like that.
So how does Rowan want to go about this? We do see Level Ball now hit the discard pile off refinement. Total energy in play, including the discard pile, is 7 right now. So that does leave only 3 psychic energy remaining, assuming we're not dealing with prized cards or cards unavailable. Are we about to see reversal energy go on Gardevoir EX? This game is just completely out of ordinary.
Yeah, things are getting a little unhinged out here. Really interested to see how this is going to develop. Which player is this going to work out for? Is Rowan going to find a way around Caleb's funky strategy? Is this strategy from Caleb even that good? Like, that's another question these players probably are wondering. But, I mean, it's really cool to see, because you think about how this matchup just conventionally goes. If you're just attacking with Charizard every single turn, even with stuff like the Panic Mask, the Lost City, the Avery, more often than not, Charizard is going to lose to Gardevoir. I mean, Gardevoir is just that powerful of a deck when it can utilize things like the reversal energy, like the counter catchers. So Caleb this strategy is trying to just find some other way.
And here we go, Rowan taking the first knockout. Finally, prize cards taken, and I think things are going to get a little bit quicker from here on out. So Caleb is sitting on a pretty solid hand at that. Has Rare Candy Charizard in hand, Iono, and even one of those counter catchers that are online, since Rowan does have a prize lead at the moment. And Caleb is going to think long and hard about how he wants to navigate from this point on.
So with the Screamtail being able to take 2 prize cards on a benched Pokemon, Rowan does have the pieces to just kind of close out this game naturally. He's got 1 Boss's Orders, and he's got 1 copy of Pal Pad. So if Rowan can use Boss's Orders to bring up, say, the Rotom, and then later on in the game use Boss's Orders on a Charizard or a Pidgeot, whatever he needs to KO, that is an easy map for him if Caleb continues with the Heat Tackle strategy. But it looks like it is time. Caleb is moving on the offensive. He's got Counter Catcher in hand, and we are finally seeing a Charizard hit the field.
So let's see what this Counter Catcher goes after. It will be that Gardevoir EX. So that Reversal Energy really getting no value on the Gardevoir. If this Gardevoir goes down, the Reversal Energy will be gone as well.
But I think Rowan recognizes, this Reversal Energy is not going to be useful regardless, right?
Followed up by an Iono. So Gardevoir EX will be going down. Rowan's hand size decreased to 4 cards in hand. As Caleb gets 6 more cards. I don't think has used Quick Search yet, so that is still an option on the table. You always want to plan ahead. That is the benefit of sort of having a free card search for something you don't necessarily need on this turn.
Yeah, let's see what he goes for here. It looks like Panic Mask being eyed up. A tech tool card we don't see too often. It's come in and out of the metagame in certain decks, and it is mainly utilized as a response, a tech for the Gardevoir matchup. Prevent all damage done to the Pokemon this card is attached to by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon that have 40 HP or less remaining. So if Rowan loads a bunch of energy onto a Shining Arcana Gardevoir, it's not going to be able to get the KO onto a Charizard EX.
And it will be a little bit harder because Rowan has chose to not play something like Moonlit Hill, which can sort of heal you out of the range where Panic Mask would prevent you from attacking. But what it is preventing right now is that Screamtail on the bench.
Yeah, Screamtail not able to attack into this active, even to do a little bit of damage. Screamtail's already got a bunch of damage counters on it. It already has a bunch of energy cards on it as well, which is another thing that's kind of annoying for Rowan. Even if he could load a bunch of energy into play somehow, some way, there's just too many into play. It makes it way more unlikely for that to happen. He does have Collapse Stadium. He's got Professor Turo in his list as well. Those are both ways that he can try to get some of those energies that are in play into the discard pile. Yeah, we'll see how he approaches things, and what ends up developing from this point forward in the game is Caleb has tied things back up with a knockout on Gardevoir EX.
And what seems like sometimes even a not really that important decision of promoting your Pokemon is super important in this spot for Rowan because of the ability to retreat energies off and allow you to have more flexibility. Was really contemplating whether to bring that Screamtail up. You can maybe retreat an energy off and give yourself that option later on, but chose to just promote this Kirlia straight away. You already see Rowan looking through the discard pile to see what Pokemon are available to be brought back with Super Rod. This is where things can get very interesting. We're going to see the attachment to the Kirlia is thinking about whether or not to retreat at this point, and we are going to see the retreat going into this Screamtail, so essentially a net minus onto this Kirlia. Now has no energy cards. This Screamtail is in a position with the way that the Panic Mask actually works, is it able to
it can attack.
Just attack?
It can attack something on the bench,
yes,
though.
It
can't attack this active, and that's what we're going to see. It's going to deal 120 damage to this benched Pidgeot EX. Now, something interesting that Caleb could go for now would be his Lost City. Get rid of this Screamtail, and then with the Jirachi being in play, the Pidgeot is now going to be safe from a future Screamtail. Now, the one problem with that is that it lets Caleb take a prize card. And if Caleb takes a prize card, he's ahead on prizes. Rowan can now utilize Reversal Energy, Counter Catcher, all of those different things. Yeah, how is Caleb going to approach this? I have no clue.
May come down to late game Iono, late game Disruption. This is where things get scary. And Rowan has played very excellently to not fall into too many traps, not really get rid of anything that's too crucial resource-wise. That is the benefit of having lots of experience with this, and also being able to think really out of your script that you do in this matchup, because this matchup does typically follow a very simple script compared to others. This is, we're going full improv here, Chip, in this match.
We definitely are. Now, Caleb did grab off the quick search a Manaphy. He could put that into play. It does make things pretty awkward if Rowan was to play something like Avery, but I actually believe his Avery is already discarded. Now, like we mentioned earlier, Rowan does play Palpad, so there is a possibility for the Avery to come back into play. But yeah, I'm looking at Caleb's board and seeing an Avery could be pretty devastating, to be honest. And look at what we're seeing here. Charmeleon come to the active. And I got to say, Ethan, I don't think Charmeleon is knocking out the Screamtail. I think we're going to see a boss's orders this turn and put some damage onto one of these Curlias.
See if you're right, Chip. Does have... There's no Stadium card in the hand. Now does have that Super Rod. That is another resource that Caleb has to manage very carefully, especially when retreating these Charizards potentially multiple times.
Yeah, only 6 basic energy in the list. It's kind of the norm in the Charizard EX deck at this point. With a pair of Super Rod, you have to really utilize that resource at the perfect time and try to capitalize on the fact that you're only playing... I mean, it's really nice to play such few energy cards. It allows you to have way more space in your deck for tons of other techs. And yeah, here we go. Boss's Orders is going to bring up that Curlia, and Combustion deals 50 damage to it.
And with the way this math works out, you can't Psychic Embrace onto it twice to retreat it. So this is a position where Rowan's really got to think about, is it worth getting this Curlia out of the active spot? Do I maybe need to look to find a card, like you mentioned, that Avery, to force my opponent to make some tough decisions? But it's kind of weird because, I mean, honestly, if Rowan plays Avery here, maybe Caleb is just okay to get rid of that Rotom and that Jirachi and then just keep the bench as is, because Moon Glow Reverse can only really take knockouts onto one prize Pokemon at this point. It would take a lot of resources, a lot of energy spreading, which is really not great in this matchup.
And we're actually going to see Refinement discarding the second Gardevoir EX. So 2 Gardevoir EX in the discard pile. Rowan does still have 2 Super Rod remaining. And look at this. You know, this game has progressed pretty slowly at this point, but Rowan only 6 or so cards remaining in the deck.
Are we going to finally see Shining Arcana come into play?
Looks
like we are. Maybe looking for a card that's been yet to be found. Maybe something like a key supporter card. Does have Boss's Orders in the hand.
I see that Palpad in the hand as well. Super Rod available. Looking at some Pokemon in the discard pile.
How many Gardevoir EX are in that discard pile? That's my question.
Both of them are at the moment.
So we're definitely going to see one of those come back. And the choice now here for Rowan is, do you put back in a Ralts? Do you put back in another one of these Gardevoir EXs if you assume it's going to get knocked out? I like this play here. You know, at some point, most likely, if you decide to put Gardevoir EX into play again, there's a high chance it could get knocked out. But at the same time, I'm actually not sure how the prize mapping would work for Caleb at that spot. Most likely, Rowan, if he's going to put Gardevoir EX, would have a plan to win the game prize mapping-wise before Caleb does.
Yeah, really interesting to see how things will develop and close out here. Rowan may be able to try to thin the deck down to a situation where he can just win in 2 turns, you know, use a Boss's Orders, and then Palpad back the boss and leave himself with such a low deck size that he can find the boss to close out the game, right? You know, there's a Pidgeot EX with a bunch of damage on it on the bench. There's the Rotom that has 190 HP on the bench. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing here, as Palpad will put back that Boss's Orders.
This is a great play here for Rowan to shut off this quick search.
Now, Caleb does have a response to this, and that is benching another Pokemon and using his collapsed Stadium to get this Rotom out of play so that it is not an option for Rowan to be able to close out the game on with a Boss's Orders on the next turn. It's going to be kind of hard for Caleb to accomplish, though, with no quick search Pidgeot in play to find whatever key piece he needs.
Yeah, now putting the Gardevoir EX back in the deck makes sense, because if your opponent's response is to Iono you and then use Collapse Stadium, you're going to need to find another Gardevoir EX to make a big power-up play or target down the bench Rotom with your Miracle Force attacks. I think this play is smart here from Rowan. We are just going to see actually a retreat, and this does a way to preserve your Gardevoir EX. And we are just going to see one more Psychic Embrace ability, and this is perfect math. Rowan has really put everything together so far in this game as we come towards a head. I mean, this has been a 35 or over 35 minutes, or almost over 25 minutes in this match. We're going to see the Screamtail built up to be able to use Roaring Scream for 160 damage. Rowan 2 prize cards away from clinching out this long, grueling, grindy game 1.
Yeah, this is quite the game that we have seen thus far, Ethan. Let's see what Caleb Gedemer has. Can he find the collapsed stadium? That, I think, is ultimately going to be the play for him here. Get rid of this Rotom. He does not have it in the hand currently, but I actually see his 1 tech copy of Professor's Research. So he's got a pretty good opportunity to dig for it.
And not having Quick Search anymore means that it's going to be a lot harder. So Rowan taking his 4 prize cards on 2 smart Pokemon, both of those Pidgeot EX. I think that's exactly what he wanted to do and has done that flawlessly.
Caleb taking stock of his own discard pile. He's got the Super Rod in hand. I think he's figuring out here how likely is it for him to draw an energy card off the research. He's got Super Rod, can put a couple back. You know, can he safely promote this Charizard EX and find that card?
Let's see how things play out. This is where you've really got to decide. Well,
you got to promote something, Caleb. Rowan saying, you got to promote something. Caleb saying, yes, you are correct. Getting a little ahead of himself. He's got to draw a card to start his turn as well. Laughing at, yeah, you can tell these players kind of in the tank here, thinking through all their plays. And I got to admit, that is probably not one of Caleb's better top decks. Boss's Orders, pretty annoying to draw into when you're planning to play Professor's Research.
A piece Caleb would have really loved to have at this spot is that 4 Seal Stone, but it's still in the prize cards. With that, maybe a Research allows you to find one of your 2 pieces, or would already just have that piece, right? Yeah. The Pokemon in the hand already.
Yep, pretty annoying, pretty unfortunate. He does have the Pokemon, the Charmander, in order to put into play. He's also got a Charizard EX in the hand, so he could guarantee the energy by evolving the benched Charmeleon, but I think he wants to keep the Charmeleon around as a way to just attack, to do the 50 damage, to do the strategy that we've seen him continue to do thus far in the game. But he's actually grabbing his other Charizard EX out of the deck currently.
Maybe just a way to thin it out. Maybe just doesn't need the Charizard.
I mean, I think that is the case. It's like if this active Charizard gets KO'd, I lose the game anyway.
Yeah, can't grab Luminion because you need to have no Pokemon that get easily knocked out to something like Miracle Force on your board. And here we go. I mean, I think you'd probably still just play this last Ultra Ball, find the Luminion. Maybe you would want it at the end of the game to close it out, but you've got to maximize your outs. You can't leave... I mean, you're leaving it up to chance, right? You're leaving it up to the probabilities off this draw, but you've got to make the odds ever in your favor.
Oh, he actually discarded the Charmander. Yeah, he thought about benching the Charmander and didn't do it.
Wow.
Yeah, so now he doesn't have the bench space to find the collapse to get rid of the Rotom.
That is a very interesting play.
So we are going to see the Charizard be utilized, just guaranteeing the energy card is able to be found. Yeah, I'm kind of curious about the discard of the Charmander here.
Maybe that was a miss. I feel like that had
There's
to
no other
been your
basic
line.
Pokemon in the deck.
No, there's not. Is there another Super Rod, though?
I think he has only played 1, I want to say. It's a little hard to keep track of all these resources.
Might have actually been the second one that just hit the discard pile.
Yeah, it may have been. There is a counter catcher. There's the Lost City. Is that something that Caleb could utilize here? Can he take advantage of the amount of energy cards that are in play from Rowan?
Not with how much damage is being pumped out. There's nothing that can be done on that end. And we know the other Gardevoir was put back into the deck. This could just be a, unless it wasn't, but I'm almost certain it was.
Yeah, Gardevoir is in the deck for Rowan. And even if it wasn't, he's got Super Rod to get it back, right? Yeah. This one is going to go to the Lost Zone, right? But there is the, even if the other Gardevoir wasn't put back, he would be able to get it back. And yeah, Caleb just going to go for the KO. Let's see if Rowan has it. All he needs is Gardevoir and Boss's Orders, and he wins the game.
So here's Level Ball. And yeah, wow, only having 5 cards in deck, and Luminion is also an out to finding Boss's Orders.
Pretty sure it's guaranteed here. Refinement plus the Shining Arcana. Unless, I guess, literally the bottom card of the deck is Gardevoir. If he has no Ultra Ball left, I guess that would mean he doesn't find it. And there's the Gardevoir. So he's at least got that. Boss's Orders brings up that Rotom. Evolve into Gardevoir, retreat, and here we go. That is the knockout. And that is 2 prizes for Rowan, winning game number 1.
What a long game. Almost a 35-minute game there. But Rowan pulling it out, going up 1-0. He's sort of shrugging a little bit, saying, do you think that sort of a strategy would work against me? And it didn't. He won that game out, and I don't really feel like in that spot I was ever really convinced Caleb was in the driver's seat throughout that game.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Caleb can get rid of the Rotom that turn, you know, it gets a little interesting, right? How things get closed out from that position forward. You know, Rowan can't really do much without putting a Gardevoir in play. I mean, I guess he could just Scream Tail at least once, maybe. Yeah, super interesting strategy there from Caleb. Maybe a little bit of a misstep at the end. I don't know. It's really tough to say. Maybe the collapsed wasn't available. Maybe it got discarded earlier and we weren't quite on track with that. Yeah, who knows?
Yeah. Well, that's how Pokemon plays out sometimes. That would have been a really close game if that collapsed stadium play was available. But even something like the Panic Mask, because it only prevents damage done to that Pokemon itself, you're able to just play around it. And then that Manaphy was forced to come down to play. At the end of the day, Rowan found the pieces needed. Boss's orders, plus the Gardevoir EX, closing things out. Taking 3 knockouts on non-Charizard line Pokemon. It's an unconventional strategy, but when your opponent sort of plays how you never expect, you've got to think up some new tricks in your book. And this will make me wonder, does Caleb take a completely different approach in this game number 2 with only 16 minutes left on the clock?
Yeah, he may have to, honestly, and the clock has to be a factor here for Caleb. You know, hope that Rowan starts poorly and then just try to capitalize, rush him down with a Charizard EX super quickly.
So we'll see. Pretty sure Caleb will choose to go second, which is pretty much how this usually always works with the deck. And Rowan going, maybe it changes up, do you think?
In this matchup, normally Charizard actually does want to go first.
Yeah, because if they hit it's that sort of dynamic where if Charizard hits everything, they hit the Battle Pass, then they're a little bit more favored going first, but it doesn't always happen.
The way to think about it really is that there's only, you know, one correct choice in a given matchup, right? Yeah. You know, both players should want to do the same thing, to not let their opponent get what they want to do, right? And, yeah, so I think Caleb will most likely choose to go first, but we'll see. Unless you know, he's got his own strategy cooked up, we know. So there's a chance that of course, changes things.
Update from some of our other matches. Derek Hugh moving to 35 match points with Charizard EX, and that Rotom we saw be so powerful, as well as tons of Pokemon for Rowan in the prize cards.
There's a lot going on here.
The boss's prize, the Avery's prize.
There's a lot going on here.
This is why the prize cards always throw me for a loop sometimes, and it will be Caleb kicking things off, and does have that Battle VIP pass, one of those 4 copies in the hand going first. It's a big advantage for Caleb, but it's going to get the bad news that Rotom is nowhere to be found.
Yeah, this would be a pretty decent hand for Rotom as well. He's got, you know, a Charizard already, so Rotom would let him dig for the potential of finding a rare candy if he wanted to get aggressive. You know, with only 15 minutes left on the clock, that is probably going to be Caleb's best strategy. But for now, you know, opening up with the Battle VIP pass is still solid. Pidgey and Charmander hit the bench.
And it will just be passing the turn back over to Rowan. What does Rowan have to work with? Fog Crystal, not a bad start. Can check the deck. We'll see that one of those Refinement Curlias are in the prize cards. Is a very big deal in this matchup. If Charizard plays sort of their normal strategy of just going aggressive, setting up quick search, and then finding boss's orders early to target down the refinements, similar to what we saw against that Zoroark box deck yesterday when they just target down Curly and you try and just slow your opponent down with their aggressive draw that they can have.
And one of the things we've talked about with Rowan's list already, does not play Battle VIP Pass, so as Gardevoir, it does make your early turns maybe a little bit weaker. It does force you to rely maybe a little bit more on the Mirage step, but more often than not, you're kind of okay with how things play out. And with the Fog Crystal and Level Ball being played already, Rowan can get plenty of basic Pokemon into play on turn 1.
So we will see the third Ralts come down into play, and this is just Rowan showing respect to Caleb being able to pull off turn 2 Rare Candy Charizard. That would be a devastating play if you draw into one of your Refinement Curlias and one of your Mirage Step, because you have one prized. Getting only one Curly off Mirage Step is such bad value.
Yep, yeah, not ideal, but you know, that's why we see the extra Ralts come into play, right? So if you do draw into a Curlia, you can at least evolve it. Mirage Step for 1 doesn't feel great, but, you know, it gets that one into play. Rowan does only play the 1 rare candy, so it's a little less likely that you're going to be able to utilize just a Ralts being in play, but with 3 Super Odd, you can bring back Curlias. There's a lot of options.
So Rowan will get the bad news that some of those key cards are in the prize cards, but the hand is looking plenty solid for the following turn. Has Iono, has some Psychic Energy in the hand. So we will see how things play out. Time winding down, but we're going to be still seeing some exciting action between both of these competitors.
Yeah, the most likely result at this point is probably that just Rowan gets the 1-0 victory, and then behind that is that Caleb wins game number 2 super fast and they tie. And the more Pokemon that Rowan puts in play, the more cards that he plays as well by utilizing a supporter, the less likely option 2 becomes.
He does draw into one of those refinement Kirlias off of that Iono. And we'll actually use the teleportation burst to deal a little bit of damage to Charmander. If it starts to maybe heat tackle a little bit more, it can be tough. But look at that. Rare Candy, Pidgeot in the hand, but I don't actually think there's much else of a follow-up because I mean...
No Rare Candy, no Charizard, no Ultra Ball, not even an Arven.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, you can't get all the pieces. I was like, maybe you grab Fish, and then Fish grabs you Arven, and then the Forest Seal Stone lets you search for a card. But I actually don't think there's another Rare Candy in the hand either.
No, yeah, actually, if he wanted to, that play would work, right? You Lumineon for the Arven. Arven gets you the Rare Candy plus the Forest Seal Stone. Forest Seal Stone gets you the Charizard, right? So it gets you everything if you wanted it, but...
You have to have a piece in hand, though. You have to have one of the pieces.
Why? Because Lumineon gets you Arven.
Because you use the quick search for Lumineon.
Yes.
So then Lumineon's Arven.
Arven gets you Rare Candy and Forest Seal Stone.
Oh, that's true. Never mind.
So you Rare Candy and you Forest Seal Stone for the Charizard, right? But
that's a lot, though. Yeah.
You could just Iono into it, which is what Caleb Gedemer does.
Built different, finds Rare Candy Charizard. Who needs to overthink and guarantee things when you can play a little bit risky? These are the chances that you have to take in your final Swiss round when so much is on the line. So there it is, Rare Candy Charizard, and Caleb is now the one putting his foot on the pedal. And we're just going to see one of them get evolved. It is going to be the Heat Tackle, taking the knockout. Let's see what Rowan has off of this Iono.
Mirage Step or no?
There is a Mirage Step in the hand.
And that Refinement Kirlia got put to the bottom on Caleb's end.
That's right. We'll probably see an attachment to this active spot. This is a smart play from Gardevoir players, just to make sure that if your refinements do get targeted down, you still can keep some energy in play and maybe put on some attack. But it's actually just going to play the Iono, so taking a little bit of a risk. You do still know that one's at the bottom, though.
Yeah, he knows one is at the bottom, so not super high odds to draw into the other one. And if he does, we could just see him evolve it. So it wouldn't be too bad.
We'll actually play the Ultra Ball this turn.
Maybe get Greninja here just to draw a little bit more, get through the deck.
Yeah, more actions, too, means more time off the clock, so it's also another good thing for Rowan.
Something to consider. Rowan definitely would love for this game to end as a 1-0.
Yeah, but it can be tough in terms of time. Lots of times this game ends up not actually being a lot of turns, though it is a lot of time taken on the clock. Let's see what the refinement drew into. There is a level ball, a reversal energy. But I actually think that Rowan's pretty much done everything he wants to this turn. Can use this Mirage Step, put Kirlia into play, skipping, having to evolve from Ralts. And now Caleb has a very solid setup. He's got Rare Candy Pidgeot, Rare Candy Charizard in play, and can now use Quick Search. We'll see if this maybe grabs something like the boss's orders to put some aggression on these bench Kirlias. We're sort of seeing the normal pipeline go through, but it is actually just going to be Rare Candy. It does have an Ultra Ball to follow up as well.
Yeah, Ultra Ball can maybe find the other Charizard, just get it into play before potentially Pidgeot gets targeted down this turn. That way you have more access to it right now. You have less access to it in the future. And we will indeed see the Rare Candy into the Charizard. So now all of those Pokemon are kind of set up and ready to go. All he needs is a Charizard EX, doesn't even need to find any energy. And Boss's Orders will target down the refinement. You see that pretty often from these Charizard players. Even though the active Kirlia's got a couple energy cards on it, the draw power of the refinement Kirlia is what's important. And it's especially strong to target that down when your opponent only Mirage Stepped for 2 Kirlia. You know for sure one is prized.
You know it's unavailable. You know it's not there. His action is back over onto Rowan. We're going to see Fog Crystal find the Psychic Energy. And does still have a Ralts in play, so if there's something like a Super Rod, it's a little costly to use it this early, but you can at least continue the refinement train.
And you're a little more, willing to use a Super Rod early when you play 3 copies of the card, right? You don't really mind it as much, and probably one of the reasons Rowan has found 3 to be so helpful up to this point.
Absolutely. Got the space for it without playing cards like Battle Pass. It's a great card to have. You've got to make cuts somewhere, so some cards go, some cards come in. So we will see the second refinement get rid of some more Psychic Energy. So 6 total in play at this point. And we are actually going to see Shining Arcana. So this is a route that Gardevoir can take sometimes to not put any EX Pokemon into play. We are finally now going to see Super Rod shuffle these Pokemon back in. And the question for me now, Rowan has yet to attach so far this turn. We are going to see if that is still a potential option. There's no supporter that's been played yet. We could still maybe see something like the Refinement be used one more time, and that will be what Rowan is going for. After playing the Super Odd level ball, we'll grab that Pokemon that was just put back into the deck.
Yeah, pretty nice sequence here from Rowan. He definitely wants to just get through the deck, also, do actions. Doesn't mind how long this game takes. Use that Refinement, discard whatever he deems to be least useful at this point. Oh, that's a pretty useful one. I don't know about that.
This hand looks tough. It's like counter catcher, counter energy, or not counter energy. Oh, wow. This is, I don't actually know if Rowan found a psychic energy. Discarded a lot of them on this turn, but it may come back to backfire. I think the only energy card in the hand is a reversal energy. That could be costly a little bit early when you're just looking to maybe get 2 knockouts back to back. Yeah, or 2 hits back-to-back.
And these are the situations where Lost City can be pretty strong for the Charizard player. Now, Rowan is playing down the Luminion V. This is a card we have not seen very commonly in Gardevoir decks for quite some time, but it is in this position going to find an Iono for Rowan.
Very interesting to put another 2 prize Pokemon into play. This can potentially change the entire dynamic of this matchup up.
Yeah, I mean, with that 2 prizes in play, does change things up. Caleb can chase that down, potentially. Rowan does, of course, have the collapsed stadium available at some point.
And there it is, just playing the Iono. We'll see 6 cards. Do we see something like the collapsed stadium to discard these pieces? There is an Ultra Ball in the hand.
Yeah, could get the Gardevoir EX if he wants to go for it this turn. Reach for the KO. KO this Charizard while it does not have a Panic Mask.
We will see the Ultra Ball. I feel like that's got to be your best play here, especially after putting that Luminion into play. There it is, Gardevoir EX coming down. And with this, Rowan will tie the game up. An excellent turn following up. I believe this is actually Rowan's 3rd turn, is that correct?
Yeah, and it's pieced together pretty nicely, especially considering that one Curlia was prized, one got KO'd on his second turn, on his opponent's second turn. So, yeah, turn 3. 330 damage, enough to deal with this Charizard EX, taking a 2 prize KO.
It does find one of those Refinement Curlias off of the prize cards.
There's a Ralts on the bench ready to evolve next turn. That'll be pretty nice. Now, how does Caleb Gedemer respond? Lost City could be an option. Panic Mask, something else to think about. Boss's Orders being thought of right away. And honestly, with this Luminion being in play, Caleb is in a situation where Boss wins him the game. Rowan, of course, has options to get around that. He's got Collapse Stadium. He also plays Professor Turo's Scenario to just pick up one of his 2 prize Pokemon. So that is something else to think about. And then also as Caleb, if you go for Boss's Orders, which he went for off Quick Search, so I think we're going to see it, that does mean that your opponent's Gardevoir does not get dealt with.
I actually don't think Rowan showed the Professor Turo the previous game because it was originally prized and then didn't discard it. So I think maybe Caleb would be a little bit more hesitant to go for this play if it was a little bit harder of an out. It's
Caleb is probably just recognizing the situation.
Well, sure.
Right?
I think that
3 minutes left. He's got to go for this. This is his best shot to come out as the victor in this game, is to take these 2 prizes, hope his opponent can't remove this Luminion in play. I mean, Caleb, pays attention to things. He knows Rowan's list. He knows Rowan doesn't play Battle VIP Pass. He knows that means he has room for extra tech cards.
Yeah.
Every Gardevoir plays Collapse Stadium, right? So we know that's available, and there's a good shot that if your opponent's not playing VIP Pass, they're fitting other techs in there, like Professor Turo. So he knows that Rowan's got the plays.
Yeah.
He's just got to play to this opportunity that Rowan doesn't quite have it.
So here we go. Do see Shining Arcana. Now, do we see this energy go to the hand? If there's not an energy there, it may just be better to concealed cards and discard it, but there is an energy, so we could potentially just see this put into play. You could just put it on the bench, Curlia, maybe. That's not a bad idea. I think I like that best out of all the choices.
Yeah, and it looks like that's where the energy is going to go. Get it into play. Can be retreated off later on if need be, and it also just is 1 more energy in play without a damage counter being placed on that Pokemon.
We do also see the concealed cards. I believe there is a counter catcher in the hand, and that could be a big piece to make it a little bit harder for Caleb to maybe find the Boss's Orders on the following turn.
Did he just find the Turo? No, I think that might be the Avery that he found. Yeah, it was the Avery drawn.
Still plenty of ways to draw more cards. We could see,
but still a decent amount of cards in the deck, honestly.
Yeah. I think it's going to come down to what the odds for this look at this point. This is what it's going to come down to, it seems. So here we go. We've got refinement. We've got two refinements, and then potentially, if you want to evolve this, you can evolve into Shining Arcana. Do we see the Turo?
Or the Collapsed? I don't think I saw it.
Maybe the last Super Rod in hand. Is there any cards you want to put back in? No, we're just going to see the Manaphy discarded. Here we go, big 2 cards. Do we see the Turo?
Or the Collapsed? Either one would do it. I don't think they're in the hand here, Ethan.
There is a Shining Arcana, so this would be the last chance to evolve this Curly on the bench into Shining Arcana, thin the deck out as much as possible, and then any of those 2 outs, if you can find them, and then you could always dig a little bit more with a supporter card, so it's not quite over yet for Rowan if he still has that option.
You have to look for the Collapsed. It cuts off the opportunity to play Turo if you use something like Iono or Research or Avery or Worker, whatever it is.
So here we go. It could come down to this. We're going to see the Shining Arcana evolved into play.
Rowan has seen so many cards this turn. Look at that. Not many left in the deck. About 8 or so, it looks like.
So here we go. 2 cards. Do we see it? And there it is. The Turo is found. And also has the counter catcher. I think this is exactly what Rowan's going to probably want to do this turn. Pick up this Luminion. We're going to see a better Pokemon put into its spot. One that doesn't give up 2 prize cards. And then last questions is, how do you want to play the rest of this out? Super Rod is a good choice. You know, you're going to probably need Gardevoir EX to close this game out at some point. So we're going to see that put back in. And the question now is, do you ever put in something like an energy card to give yourself a little bit more consistency off of this almost inevitable Iono as a response from Caleb?
Yeah, Iono has to be Caleb's real only play from this position. And Caleb actually can get the knockout with the Charmeleon that's in play if he wants to. It may be better to just go ahead and throw out the Charizard, get the Panic Mask on it, something along those lines. But yeah, we'll see exactly how things develop.
And that's a big find, too. Has reversal energy. That means that if a Charizard comes out, or even something with a Panic Mask, this Arcana Gardevoir may not need to damage itself enough to get out of that range.
Yeah, Panic Mask may not be enough. It may come down to Caleb having to attack with the Charmeleon here. Get this 1 prize KO. Hopefully bench another Charmander off an Iono, something like that. Try to make 1 more Charizard. Try to win in 2 turns. And yeah, off Iono, cross his fingers that Rowan cannot find the game-winning combo of cards.
So let's see. I think only Rowan's choice is, does he want to play Counter Catcher? Now, it does give you an out later on, but I feel like shutting Quick Search off could make things a little bit more... It's kind of weird,
Caleb's deck is much worse when it does not have Pidgeot in play, but Rowan will just choose to knock out this active, leaves the Quick Search hanging around. We'll see if that opens up any lines for Caleb to potentially capitalize on.
I think I just like this from Rowan. Give yourself more outs in the deck to win the game at this point. Especially with the Pidgeot there, you need less energies to knock it out. You only need 8, so it could be relevant.
Something Caleb could do would be to bench a bunch of Pokemon and then use his own Collapsed Stadium to discard his Pidgeot. It's quite a bit to find. Yeah. There's a lot of Pokemon in his discard pile already. He has already, I think, played 1 of his Super Rod, and his hand is not the strongest. So I got to think the odds there are not the highest. But if there is a line available, Caleb's going to try to find it, and he's going to go for it.
So our in-game clock says time has been called, so we'll see who is turn 0, but with how this has worked out, we will either have a tie or Rowan will be advancing to 11, 2, and 2. So it's going to come down to these next couple of turns. So see the Ultra Ball. Let's check how many basic Pokemon are in there, but Caleb just understands that out is so unfeasible. We'll just see the Charizard
He used Quick Search
evolved.
already. He found the Panic Mask. This is the line we're going for. You know, once Charizard comes into play, we're not going for the you know, the Collapse, getting all of our 2 prizers out of play option.
So Caleb here is turn 1, so this will finish away whether we want it to or not. We're going to be seeing the end of this second game. Iono being played, Rowan getting just 2 cards off of this draw, and Caleb's all in on this play. Bring Charizard up, put the Panic Mask on, and say, look, if you've got what it takes to win this game, you will be a top-cut competitor at the Vancouver Regional Championships. Let's see what Rowan has access to, has 2 abilities on the board. We could also see potentially a refinement.
And he's
look
already
at
got
this
it in his hand. Yep.
Even has the Pal Pad. This can put back a beneficial draw supporter into the hand for, or rather into the deck for Rowan. We did see that Avery hit the discard pile, and I think that's probably the best one you want to put back. You could also put Iono, but I feel like Iono's return is really just not worth drawing, potentially the 2 cards at the end of the game.
Yeah, not even going for it up to this point. Rowan actually starting with the Shining Arcana does hit an energy card. That's pretty nice as well, to be honest.
So it looks like not even shuffling the deck as it seems. We are just going to see Rare Candy get discarded. What do we see off of these 2 cards?
There's that collapsed, and I think, yeah, Gardevoir.
That's just it. The Gardevoir can evolve, and since Reversal Energy is still on board, it's still active because Rowan's behind. He can Psychic Embrace, power this Shining Arcana Gardevoir up, and Rowan Stavenow will be advancing to the top cut in his home country of Canada.
Yeah, well done. Well played by Rowan. Able to try to find a route against Caleb's unique strategy in game number 1 and then set himself up very, very nicely in game number 2 to just come away with a 2-0 victory.
What a set. Very interesting, that first game, and the second game played out sort of how we would typically expect this matchup to be, and you can kind of see why Caleb went for a more unconventional strategy in that first game.
If you're just attacking with Charizard, you're just asking to lose this matchup most of the time, especially when you're playing against a player of Rowan's caliber.
So we'll see Rowan in the top cut. That's another Gardevoir locking up a spot. We saw Lucas Zing ID this round, so he'll be another Gardevoir player in this top cut. This first game is one that I might go back and maybe view a little bit to see how this strategy played out. It felt like Rowan had the, okay, you know what? Sometimes it's interesting to do matches. You never review old matches like this?
Not this one.
Okay, well, at least you're being straightforward with it. So we will just see the Gardevoir get evolved in this game, and this is sort of how things played out. Pidgeotto X was established twice. We didn't really see that typical in this matchup, but that's sort of how things play out. As our round has concluded, we will be getting into our top cut soon.
Yeah, very, very soon. Top 8 players will be finalized. Standings have to be finalized, and once we get that sorted out, we will be moving on to the top 8 here.
So what a game between both these competitors. You want to see them both make it in. I think a name like this at the top cut would make this an even more a special tournament to really look back on with all these top names. This is just how Pokemon works sometimes. Not everybody can make it in. Rowan will be the one advancing this time here in Vancouver.
Yeah, really exciting game. Yeah, curious to see if Caleb's opinion has changed about the strategy. I wonder if the Cresselia being in Rowan's list does change things about that strat. You know, Caleb has beaten plenty of Gardevoirs throughout the weekend doing, you know, what he did in game number 1, but perhaps some of the Gardevoir players he played against were lesser Gardevoir players than Rowan Stavenow.
What a match. Great to look back on as we are now concluded with all 15 rounds of Swiss. It's been a journey to get to this point. Through 2 days of competition, we've seen meta decks that I wasn't even thinking about on my plane flight here to be seeing. Yeah, Zorobox.
Entei,
yeah, maybe
Valiant.
even Entei Valiant, some Snorlax stuff. You know, Snorlax maybe not as much, but the other decks a little bit. But it's been a blast so far, Chip, and this is where the party really starts here as we get into our top 8 cut. It's single elimination from here on out, and $10,000 and a trip to Hawaii on the line for these competitors.
Yeah, and don't forget as well, once our top 8 standings are finalized, we will be having our community choice vote in the Twitch chat. So make your voices heard. Let us know who you want to be seeing in our top 8, which match you want to see play out. Pick an interesting one for us, and yeah, we're looking forward to it. All of these players have definitely worked really hard to get to this point, so excited to see how that pays dividends for someone to come away as a champion.
This could play out so many different ways. There's sort of more polarizing matchups in cut. We could be seeing Miraidon play up against Gardevoir. That's a matchup that Gardevoir really doesn't want to play against. UVMAX has a lot of really close matchups, but Roaring Moon is a matchup it doesn't want to hit. So who comes away with this tournament win could totally come down to what this bracket looks like matchup-wise, not player-wise. Yeah, definitely. The matchups are a big deal, but, you know, the players are the most important piece of the puzzle, right? Finding the correct